All right, guys, here we go. Okay, two hands, wire. All right, guys, here we go. Where is it? Okay, here we go. We're starting here. Okay. No Emunah day would be complete. We've got an echo. Would be complete without a science presentation. You got to deal with science. Science, engineering. You know, it used to be we brought in, we used to bring in Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Used to be we lived in a world where everyone looked up to science, the professor said something, then COVID came. You know, as a therapist, I was dealing with a client who was could believe in conspiracy theories. Lower, better. You're telling me that all the drug companies are not testing it properly, and the masks, it's all lies. And, you know, I need to help him. I follow my rabbi, he has his advice. It's all, and at the end it turned out, with the exception of the little robots that are going to take you over from the vaccination, he was actually right on most of the stuff. Science, you know, we don't look up the way it used to. Global warming, we find out the agendas. But still, we have to deal with it. People are going to be going to college, you're going to be going to have professors, people are going to be getting on, everyone looks up and they say, oh, they said these are facts. So we always would bring in Dr. Schroeder, PhD. And over the years, the guys were just like, oh, we already know all that stuff. Why? Well, I go to Rav Rosenblatt's shir. Like, oh, okay. Who's Rav Rosenblatt? You mean the one that's teaching all about Kabbalah? So then I found out, how does he know all this stuff about science? So one of the cutting edge scientists nowadays on biological evolution. He wrote
evolutionary biology.
Evolutionary biology? One of the leading grammar experts. There we go. Look at that. This is in his, after all the PhD people, this is what he wrote in the last edition of his book that he just put out, which is all the newest stuff. You think you have the good, you know, evolution, Epicurus, this is the latest level of, and it's amazing stuff, and Rav Chaim, he's in touch with him all the time, back and forth, getting all the latest stuff, arguing with him. Here, what I have inside here exactly. Considering Rav Chaim's thorough knowledge of the scientific material, we have asked him for the first time this year to give the science presentation at Emunah Day 5784. There we go. Rav Chaim, we titled this, I did a lot of actually, we had help, but I did a lot of the graphics and things with help, AI. So we titled it, it's not easy being an atheist, so welcome Rav Chaim. Rav Chaim, can you tell us please? What is an atheist?
All right. An atheist is someone who claims that he's sure that there's no divine being, and that is in contrast to an agnostic who asserts that you can't really know.
And how does an atheist know there's no God?
Okay, so if you press most atheists, they'll actually admit that they don't really know and that they're really agnostics. However, there are a handful of atheists that will claim that they're in fact atheists and they know there's no God, and they will justify calling themselves that by saying, well, there's a whole bunch of proofs to God and we can refute all of them, so since we can refute all of them and we're left with nothing, there's almost certainly no God. Now, whether or not that makes any sense and is justified, that's really what I'm going to speak about tonight.
Wait a second. I got a few ideas for your speech. I'm on a roll.
I prepared something, because I just
Give me a chance. Give me a chance. Yeah, here we go. No, I got it.
No.
All right. I got some good ideas.
Let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Here we go. Here we go. The Big Bang!
You really do have some good ideas, all right. What do you want me to talk about with the Big Bang?
Oh, come on. I mean, that means there's a beginning. The beginning starts with God. Here, I made a little presentation. Hold on. This is you can take.
All right, you're really prepared, I see.
You have to realize that until less than approximately 40 years ago, the overwhelming scientific opinion was, forget Shabbos, forget Kasha, the Bible couldn't even get the first sentence right. The universe was eternal. It's important to realize every change in science for the last 50 years has moved science closer to the biblical understanding.
Einstein regarded this as the greatest mistake of his life. When Albert Einstein developed his equation of general relativity, he found that the equations predicted an expanding universe, something that was not known to astronomers back then.
With all due respect, I don't think there's much point in going into this further. An atheist will tell you that the Big Bang actually does not prove anything, okay? Because Big Bang cosmology simply says that the universe, which is now expanded, was once contracted. Where does the universe come from? It's simply not the topic of Big Bang cosmology. And you can think of it like this. You could talk about a balloon being inflated. You could talk about the balloon being deflated. Whether you're talking about this, whether you're talking about that, you're just not talking about where the balloon comes from in the first place. Here also, the fact that the universe, which is now expanding, was once contracted, says nothing about where it comes from. It's just not the topic of the theory. And as far as what would an atheist actually say about where existence comes from, an atheist will tell you existence has always existed. Okay? It doesn't come from anywhere, it's always existed. And should you say to the atheist, well, that's ridiculous. Of course it came from somewhere. He'll say, you say it on God, I say it on existence. And should you start making distinctions, no, for God it makes sense, for the universe it doesn't make sense, I guarantee you will go in circles forever. So I would highly recommend.
Well, and what did they say about the beginning of the Big Bang? We have for centuries that they said there's no beginning, and now we see there's a beginning. They said, well, wrong, and now there's a beginning.
The beginning just means the beginning of the expansion of the universe.
And what was before that?
What? They will claim a non-expanded universe. Okay?
Forget it.
I agree. Forget it.
Give me a chance. I got another idea. No, I got a good idea.
I hope it's better than this one. Yes.
So here we go. There's sun miracle. Here we go. That's your topic tonight.
And what is this meant to prove?
Expanding universe, and all of a sudden, the sun and the earth exactly stop in just the right place, and we don't freeze to death. We don't. Here we go. I need some. Exploding sun and earth find its perfect spot, and we have exactly over and up. Perfect for life.
Stop the video. Stop.
It's gonna come down to my time. It's really good. Look, here we go. It's really good. That's my time. There it is.
Actually? All right.
Not yet. Hold on. Yeah?
All right. Rav Zev, I assume what you mean to say is that if the Earth was slightly further from the sun, it would be too cold to support life. If the Earth was slightly closer to the sun, it would be too hot to support life. Earth is in what we call the Goldilocks zone. Will an atheist get excited from this proof? Absolutely not. Why? Okay, think of it like this. Imagine you walk into a well-stocked shoe store and you say you want a size 12 of a certain style of shoe, and the guy goes over to the shelf, takes it off the shelf, okay? Would you react, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have my size? You would not react that way. Why? It is a well-stocked shoe store. It's got every size from the smaller sizes to the bigger sizes. Within the full array of sizes in the shoe store, it's going to have a size 12. Okay? If you realize how many planets are actually in the universe, our own solar systems got, when I was your age, it was 9. Pluto got demoted, now there's 8. Let's just round it off to 10 to make it easy to do the math. Okay? If we assume that every star in the skies got around 10 planets surrounding it, and if you think about how many planets there are in the entirety of the universe, probably across the full array of planets, you probably have a planet that is every possible distance from its local star, right? And some are going to be too cold, some are going to be too hot, but it's virtually inevitable across the universe that you're going to have planets that are in the Goldilocks zone just right. Now, you could ask the question, still, what's the chance that we're on that planet? Notes leading atheist Richard Dawkins, who we'll talk a bit more about later, it's not a matter of chance, okay? Yeah, if we were outside the universe, looking from outside the universe for those few planets that are just right, yeah, that would be, as he puts it, the proverbial needle in the haystack. Okay, however, we're not looking for the planet that could support life. If we are alive, then we're on a planet that can support life and we don't need to look. So once again, Rav Zev, I don't think this is going to really help much.
We exist, and therefore it must be true. So you can't do anything miraculous, because the proofs that forget it. Okay, I got another one.
Okay, we'll forget it.
There we go. The human body. Let's move in. There we go. Oh, come on. The complexity of the human body. There we go. There we go. Come on. That shows the Rabbanan. Come on. Rabina talks about it. Come on. You look at yourself, breathing, everything. Everything working together. Oh, wait. I have a presentation.
Okay, let's see.
Let's see. Is it starting?
10 major systems are responsible for the body's functions: skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, nervous, endocrine, lymphatic, respiratory, digestive, urinary, reproductive. The skeletal, muscular, cardiovascular, and nervous systems in particular create an infrastructure that facilitates the other system. Nestled within these muscles is the cardiovascular system, a pipeline that includes the heart, blood vessels, and the blood itself. Also called the circulatory system, the cardiovascular...
I think we've seen enough.
What?
I think we've seen enough. All right, once again, what does this actually prove? Nothing. Why? Because an atheist will simply tell you that what you saw here on the screen evolved from purely random accidents, i.e. random mutations, from much, much simpler life forms. And therefore, since we got to this from much simpler things by accident, this does not prove anything.
Really?
Yes. Well, now, I'm not, it should be clear. There's obviously a lot to discuss about whether what I just said is reasonable or not, but the point is, unless, Rav Zev, you actually address those evolution-related issues, you cannot just waive human
Okay, I'll address it. Forget the human being. Okay, fine.
Okay.
I got it. Single human cell. Here we go. Come on, the complexity of a cell. One second. Here we go. Inside the cell.
Let's look inside a cell's nucleus. Here we find the nuclear genetic material known as deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. Each cell's DNA holds the genetic code, or instructions, for everything within that organism. Before a cell divides, DNA must replicate or copy itself.
I think we've seen enough.
What? I worked hard on this. A lot of Googling.
Well,
What? What's the
with
problem?
all due respect for all the effort that you put in, once again, an atheist will respond, you've got to deprogram yourself from the cell that you see now and understand that the original cell could have been much, much, much simpler, simple enough that it could have just basically popped out of nowhere, and therefore this doesn't matter because this could have come from much simpler beginnings.
I feel like I'm talking to power after the fifth Makkah. Yeah. Okay, fine. You know what? What are you going to talk about? Because go ahead.
Okay, so you might be wondering, so what's left to talk about? We keep pushing it down. Okay, there's one thing left to talk about, and that is that very, very, supposedly very simple cell that I just mentioned. Right? I said, don't get excited from this, or an atheist will tell you, don't get excited from this, because maybe this started with a much, much simpler cell, okay, but that actually represents the dead end, possibly for the atheist, okay? That simple cell, where did that come from? Okay, and that was what I was
No, it came from something much simpler.
You mean through evolution?
Yeah.
Oh, Okay, the problem is for the atheist, we've reached a stage of reality where he cannot invoke evolution. Why? You can only talk about evolution once you're dealing with reproducing cells. When you're dealing with a cell that has a baby cell there is the possibility that by pure accident, i.e. random mutation, the baby accidentally comes out better than the parent and spreads through natural selection and multiply that by a zillion stages and you get life. When you are dealing with the original cell that's coming from inanimate matter, nothing's reproducing, no opportunity for accidental improvements, at that point you cannot talk about evolution. So the original cell cannot be the product of evolution. So whatever the atheist is going to say, he's going to have to say without running to that shelter called evolution.
We got this right. The original cell, being all the cells, random mutations, and they pass it on by dividing, reproducing to the next generation. But this one didn't have anyone before it.
Exactly.
So whatever it has, it had to get by itself within whatever. How long does a cell live for? A single cell life for?
Not very long.
What?
Well. Let me explain.
One second. We need more graphics. 1 second. Here we go. The first original cell. There we go.
Okay. Now,
mycoplasma genitalium.
We'll speak more about this particular cell.
Which is an STD, by the way. Here we go. Happy birthday.
Reserve just brought up the issue of time, okay? A person might say that regarding the original cell, all right, so you don't have evolution, it can't evolve, but it can develop over thousands and millions of years. Actually, you don't have not thousands of years, millions of years, not thousands of years. You probably, for that original cell, do not even have days. Why? Okay, that original cell is not inside anything, okay? It is unfathomably tiny, unfathomably fragile, just loose in the environment. Okay, the environment is almost certainly going to destroy that cell. If it's already the first cell, it can live on through its children's cell. But we're talking about the first ever cell that's got to have a baby cell, and so it doesn't really have time to develop because again the environment will almost certainly destroy it before anything can really happen. And therefore, the first cell holds out hope much more than anything else as something that might actually prove an intelligent designer.
Okay, so what does it need? Maybe it just has, it just has a little, it knows what to do. It figured it out.
Okay, so let's actually delve into this. What are the minimal requirements for self-replication? Okay, now I just used the term
self-replication. What does that mean?
Yes, let's expand here a little. Okay, life is defined scientifically as something that is capable of self-replication, something that is able to make a copy of itself. We are alive not because we do or will have children, okay? We are alive because every cell in our body with time makes a copy of itself, and death involves, right, the shutdown of metabolism and stuff like that, where the cells in the body, chas v'shalom, are no longer reproducing. Now, an atheist might want to claim, yeah, the original cell, very, very, very simple, so simple that it could pop up from inanimate matter, but he cannot oversimplify the original cell because there's something called the four indispensable, please keep it down, guys. There's something called the four indispensable prerequisites of self-replication. Again, the atheist is going to try and simplify things. He can simplify things all he wants, but he cannot oversimplify things because you logically cannot have self-replication unless you have the following four things. One, a data storage system with instructions for the replica. Okay, we need instructions. You build a building, you have to have instructions, you have to have a blueprint. Something cannot make a replica of itself without instructions that are stored in a data storage system. Okay, that is indispensable prerequisite number one for having self-replication. Number two, you need a constructor device that's able to understand those instructions, even if only mechanically, and build based on it. Okay, something's got to do the building. So the second indispensable prerequisite of self-replication, a constructor device that could interpret, decipher the instructions, and act on it. Thirdly, we have to have the ability to take raw material from the environment. You can't make the replica out of air. The replica has to be made out of something. Okay, so we have to where those raw materials are going to come from the environment. Third, indispensable prerequisite, we have to be the ability to take raw material from the environment. And lastly, okay, whatever you do, you need energy. You got to eat 3 meals a day and get your energy. Likewise, you want to have self-replication. We need the ability to generate, store, and distribute energy. Okay, now
all this has to be inside the first cell that can live for maybe a day,
Basically, yes.
By itself?
Yes.
Without coming from another cell?
Exactly. It's coming from inanimate matter. And, of course, it's not enough for these four things to be sitting on a table. They have to all come together cohesively in this thing called a self-replicator. Okay? Now, I repeat, if the atheist wants to simplify the original cell, let him do it all he wants. He cannot oversimplify it beyond these four things. And I want to emphasize in this context, an atheist will rely on the fact that the first cell is an unknown. No one really knows how simple it was or wasn't. And they'll say, well, meaning in their eyes, it's a blank. And once it's a blank, well, we're going to just fill in that blank however we want. What I'm saying now is the response to that. You cannot fill in the blank however you want, because there's only so simple the simplest cell can be, because it cannot be simpler than something that has these four things. These four things have to be there. Now, one thing that is actually a bit of an unknown, before I continue, I want to clarify. I am not going to talk about DNA. I'm not going to focus on DNA, which is our instructions that we have in our cell, because no one really knows what the original cell was like. We don't know if the original cell had DNA. So I'm going to speak a bit more in the abstract, okay, about the concept of instructions in general. Now, my focus for the time being is going to be on instructions, and that itself needs an explanation. If we just said that there are four indispensable prerequisites for a cell, why am I going to focus on instructions? And the answer is very simple. From the second cell and on, meaning from the first ever baby cell and on, the instructions are responsible for everything. Every one of you actually has all four of these things in your cell. Okay, you've got your DNA is your instructions, you've got proteins that are constructor devices, you've got cell walls that can take raw material from outside the cell, and you've got the mitochondria, which are the energy centers that generate, store, and distribute energy. But why do you have all four of these things in every cell in your body? Because of that one thing you got from your parents' DNA. Okay, so from the second cell and on, the instructions are responsible for everything, and therefore, let's focus on this thing called instructions. Now, so on the one hand, we're dealing with unknowns. On the other hand, one of the main things I want to emphasize tonight is there's something called the knowns within the unknowns. The four prerequisites of self-replication is one set of knowns within the unknowns. I want to now, as we focus on instructions, talk about another set of knowns within the unknowns, okay? What I'm going to say now is true of all instructions in any context ever. I repeat, what I'm saying now is inherently true of all instructions in any context ever. So even if I don't know what the original instructions were like, you don't know what they're like, atheists don't know what they're like, the following was for sure true because they were instructions. And what I'm about to say is true of any instructions. One, instructions are at most slightly flexible, but overall rigid. Okay, some instructions are completely rigid, right? Very often, like on a lock, I'll talk about a combination soon. You've only got one combination, and that's it. So that's called completely rigid instructions. But even where instructions are slightly flexible, they're only slightly flexible, but overall they're going to be rigid. For example, if I want to get you to meet me at the Chorva at 6 o'clock, there's not only one way I could say it. I could say, meet me at the Chorva at 6, right? Bo nifkosh b'Chorva b'shah shesh, right? I could say it in a more slangish manner. You, me, Chorva, 6. Okay, maybe I could say it in 100 ways and in a gazillion, many, many languages. Okay, but of course, every other possible thing that I could say is not going to get you to meet me there at the Chorva at 6. So that's called instructions are slightly flexible, but overall rigid. There's only so much you can change instructions before they do not instruct what you want. Okay, that is one thing that is inherently true of instructions. Second thing, all instructions in any context ever are going to have the following two factors: spaces and variables to fill those spaces. Okay, think in terms of a barcode. A typical barcode's got 13 numbers across. We're going to call those 13 spaces. And 0 through 9 is the 10 variables that can fill in those spaces. QR codes. Every box, every square in that QR code is a space. And there's two variables for each space. It's going to be black or white. The combination locks that have 3, 4, 5 wheels that you got to spin and get the right number. So there you've got 3 or 4 or 5 spaces. And once again, 0 through 9 is 10 variables to fill in the spaces. Or those combination locks, which I haven't seen since I was in high school, the ones that you spin around. There you've got 3 spaces. Usually you need 3 numbers. And I think you got 0 through 60, let's say. Okay, again, all instructions are going to involve a text, of course, a sentence. Also, clearly, all the spaces in the sentence are the spaces. The 26 letters of the alphabet in the space bar are the 27 variables. You get the idea. Okay, and that is the second thing that is true of all instructions. Third and last, You cannot have instructions without at least binary digits. Again, if you want to have instructions, you've got to have at least 2 options. Why? Because if you only have a single digit code, a single digit instructions, all the instructions that you ever say are just the same thing. If you just have 0, for example, so 000, 000, 000, 000, you cannot code for diversity with just 000.
Like in the computers of binary code.
Exactly.
Everything's 010101, and that's how we get this.
Exactly. Mean it, right? But that, what I just said is if you have only a single digit. Once you've got 2 digits, as we see from computer programming, an entire world of possible instructions opens up, because 000 will be one thing, 001 a second thing, 011 a third thing. Okay, so you cannot have instructions for diversity and multiplicity without at least binary digits. I repeat, these are 3 things that are inherently true of any instructions in any context ever. So even if none of us, including the atheist, has any clue what the original cell was like, this much we know about the original instructions. Now, it's regarding this that I said before, I don't want to focus on DNA because we don't know if the original cell had DNA. Let's focus on instructions in the abstract, okay? And even within the abstract, these things are going to be true. Oh, now there's one thing, there's one detail regarding the original instructions that's actually an unknown, okay, relative to what we just spoke about. However, as we'll now clarify, even here we could come up with a number that is for sure going to be true. So it's a relative unknown, but we're still going to be able to come up with a certain minimum number that's for sure going to be true. The thing I have in mind now is the issue of how many spaces were in the original instructions. Meaning, in every cell in your body, there are 3.3 billion DNA letters. Okay, we saw in the video now the AGCTs. Okay, in every cell in your body are 3.3 billion letters. Okay, how many, each of those things we're calling a space. In the original instructions, okay, in order to kind of do some math over here about the likelihood of getting a cell accidentally, randomly, we have to know what numbers we're dealing with. So, what is the minimum number of spaces in the simplest code that we can imagine? It's a bit of an unknown, but I want to basically put down the number 1,500 as something that was for sure true. Where am I getting this number from? Okay, I'm getting this number from the thing that was on the screen before, microplasma genitalium. But it's okay. It doesn't.
Yeah, I gotta go with it.
All right, microplasma genitalium. This is right now, 2024. Okay, and ever since research on this stuff was done, this is the simplest cell alive today. Okay, this is the simplest cell alive today. And why is it called the simplest cell? Because it's very, very simple. How many spaces are in its instructions? How many DNA letters are in its DNA? 580,000. Okay, so the simplest cell alive today, which is clearly simple, that's why it's called the simplest cell, okay, it has 580,000 spaces in its DNA. Now, even if we want to say that the original cell was much simpler than this, well, this is also pretty simple, and yet it's got 580,000 letters. Well, if so, I want to say that 1,500 is certainly true of the original code. I don't see any logical basis for saying that it's less than that. It probably had to be much more than that. And regarding that it had to probably be much more, here's another way to make the point. There is a field called synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is the attempt of scientists to make a cell in a laboratory, okay? Synthetic biologists discuss how many, what is the minimum number of DNA letters that they would need to put in a gene to make a fake cell, okay? And now, there's, some put a...
Hold on one second, Rav Chaim. The one that you picked, and this is what I did the other day, we discovered this really amazing. How many years ago did you put it together?
My president, I don't know, 5, 6, 7.
So he picked this particular cell, the simplest cell alive. I went and did a little research on it myself to make the stuff, and I discovered that in 2008, this was the one that they picked. These guys, they actually created physically, not virtually. Physically, this cell, the simplest one, with all this code inside of it, they replicated the DNA. It took... They were using actually, not binary, they were doing double that. They did like actual DNA, so it was 4 for each one. It took all the code, printed on paper, in base 4, not binary, 147 pages of just information, instructions, and type 10 font, of instructions, all the spaces you would need. It's unbelievable. So on base 2, it would need a little bit more than that. It would need to be about twice that. But you picked the same thing they picked. They actually did it, and it's the amount of data it takes, it's staggering.
Right. What Rav Zev is saying is if you take those 580,000 nucleotides, which are not a binary code, they're...
yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Right? It's a 4-digit code, like DNA, not a 2-digit code. If you put it on paper, it was 140, and it was 10 points. So, all right, font size, it was 147 pages of letters, okay? That's how much information we're dealing with. So again, I'm following the atheist lead. I'm not claiming that that's what we need for the simplest cell. I'm being way, way more lenient. But again, if that's what the simplest cell alive today has, I think 1,500 spaces in the simplest instructions is a very, very fair estimate. And I started to say regarding synthetic biology, okay, there is different opinions how, on the minimum. This is what they're discussing. The minimum, okay, but even according to the Mekilim, even according to the lenient opinion, at least 30,000 spaces in the simplest instructions as they attempt to make a cell in a laboratory from scratch, okay? So if even the synthetic biologist professionals say at least 30,000, when I'm putting it down at 1,500, that it is an extremely fair estimate.
Actually, you'll probably need a little bit more because this one's borrowing.
Right. The truth is, what Rav Zev is referring to, this thing, Mycoplasma genitalium, is a parasite. It lives inside other host organisms, and it actually is very not so capable on its own, but it borrows cellular stuff from its host. Meaning, it's only able to have only 580,000 because it borrows some of its capabilities from its host. If it would be a free-floating cell, it would be even more. But again, I'm ignoring all that, and I'm putting it at 1,500. I don't see any rational basis to argue.
And this one, by the way, outside of a host, lives for an hour, max, in water.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're ready to put together some numbers. Okay, so we're talking about the simplest instructions that we can imagine, and even within the unknowns, we've got the following knowns. It's got to have binary digits. It's got to have at least 1,500 slots. 1,500 slots probably is way too small, but for the sake of the atheists, we'll keep it at 1,500. Now, if in any context ever, guys, simple math. If you've got binary digits and 1,500 slots, 1,500 spaces, what is the total number of permutations of binary digits, 1,500 slots? Okay, so again, you got 1,500 slots, binary digits, meaning 2 variables per slot. What is the total number of possible permutations? Okay, and the answer is 2 times 2 times 2, 1,500 times, otherwise known as 2 to the 1,500th power. Okay, 2 to the exponent of 1,500. Put that into a scientific calculator. Okay, put it into a scientific calculator. 2 to the power of 1,500, and what will that scientific calculator tell you? Infinity. Okay, infinity. When you get your phones back, you can check it for yourself. Put 2 to the 1,500th power into a scientific calculator, it will tell you infinity. Okay, we are not talking about our genetic code that has 4 digits, not 2. We're not talking about our genetic code that has 3.3 billion spaces rather than just 1,500. We're talking about a really, really simple code of 2 digits, 2 variables, 1,500 spaces, 0, that's it. Nevertheless, the pot of possibilities is so many that a scientific calculator will say infinity. Now, of these relatively infinite possibilities, how many are actually useful? The first cell is only the first cell because it has instructions that make the first ever baby cell. So of this giant pot of possibilities, how many are actually useful? Well, on the one hand, it's an unknown, but this is one of our knowns within the unknowns. Meaning, right, our first known within the unknown about instructions are slightly flexible, but overall rigid. Right? We said there's only so much you can change instructions before they don't instruct what you want. So even within the unknown, how many of these instructions are actually going to be useful? Maybe 10, maybe 100, okay? But you know what? Let's be nice to the atheists and make it thousands of thousands of thousands. 10 to the 20, 10 to the 100, okay? Make it that there's 10 to the 100 useful codes. So what? It is 10 to the 100 out of a pot of what a scientific calculator calls infinity. Okay, again, whatever's useful, it doesn't matter how much useful stuff there is, right? We have to look at the pot of possibilities. The pot of possibilities of just binary digits, 1,500 spaces, is, according to the scientific calculator, infinity. And therefore, the chance of getting useful instructions naturally, without any intelligent input, is basically 0.
All right, can you give me an
Yes.
example?
Let me-
Shooting targets.
Right, let me give you in order to appreciate what I'm saying, consider the following. Marshall, you're shooting targets in the dark, guys, okay? I'll put this question out to you. Please, if you were in my class, do not answer, because you know the answer, okay? For those not in my class, you're shooting targets in the pitch dark, and there are red targets and there's green targets, and if you hit a green target, you get $1,000, okay? Scenario 1, there are 100 green targets. Scenario 2, there are 1,000,000 green targets, and you're shooting in the dark. Where are you more likely to hit, by the 100 or by the 1,000,000? By the 1,000,000, okay? Oh, but I didn't tell you the whole story. I didn't tell you that the 100 green are 100 out of 200. 100 red, 100 green. Whereas the 1,000,000 green are 1,000,000 out of a quadrillion, okay? 1,000,000 green and a quadrillion minus 1,000,000 red or whatever, okay? If I now re-ask the question where you're more likely to hit, what are you going to answer? 100. The 100, okay? Why? Because obviously where the right targets are 50% of all the possibilities, and the right targets are whatever 1,000,000 out of quadrillion is, obviously where it's 50%, that's where you're more likely to get. Okay, based on this, let me put down a clear rule. It's not about targets, it's about percentages. When you are shooting in the dark, it's not about targets, it's about percentages. It doesn't matter how many targets are useful. What matters is those useful targets, what percentage are they of all possible targets, okay? Plugging that in over here. Okay, let it be that there's 10 to the 100 useful codes, but 2 to the 1500th power is, according to a scientific calculator, relative infinity. So it doesn't matter how many useful codes there are, it's out of a pot of relative infinity, and basically any number over infinity is basically 0. What is, accordingly, the chance of getting instructions randomly without any intelligent input? 0. And as far as I could tell, okay, this is a irrefutable evidence of an intelligent designer. Okay, we're not dealing with the human that they'll say, well, we didn't start with the human, right? We started with cells. Okay, we're not dealing with the cell. We didn't start with that cell. We started with simple cells. I'm talking about the simplest cell possible. I've exaggerated the numbers in favor of the atheist ridiculously, and it doesn't help at all. Okay, even after all my exaggerated numbers, for the sake of making this work for the atheists, we are dealing with something that basically comes out a probability of 0. And that's just the instructions. Add to that the chance of getting the constructor device, the raw material device, the energy device, the chance of it all coming together in a cohesive way in a very small amount of time before this thing just gets destroyed by the environment. Okay, life is irrefutable evidence of an intelligent designer.
Oh, so wait a minute, you're saying I have this first cell, I have all this instruction here. I know what you're going to do here, so I'm being prepared.
Okay.
You have all this stuff here that could have come from trillions of trillions, and you need to have it say so much, and it has to say it all, plus all the other stuff, and there's no way in this first cell in 24 hours or an hour, there's no way it could happen.
Correct.
Impossible, just not by itself, nothing else before it, unless there's a designer. Correct. Mathematically.
Correct.
Yeah, so what's the atheist going to say? Yeah, what's he going to say?
Good question. Well, okay, this seems so straightforward. What would an atheist say? Okay, we do not need to wonder. We have the best-selling atheist book ever by leading atheist Richard Dawkins.
I did not Photoshop it, by the way. That's actually the shirt he's wearing.
Yes, we are all Africans. Okay, guys, we do not need to guess what an atheist will say. We have it right in front of us. Let's read it together. Page 137 in The God's Illusion, the best-selling atheist
Everyone
book ever.
take out your pocket version. Sorry.
Okay. Quote unquote, now suppose the origin of life really was quite staggeringly improbable event. Suppose it was so improbable as to occur on only 1 in a billion planets. And then a few lines later, but here we are talking about odds of 1 in a billion. And a few lines after that, if the odds of life originating spontaneously on a planet were 1 billion to 1 against, okay? Leading atheist Richard Dawkins, that millions of atheists across the globe are atheists thanks to him, has told us 3 times in this paragraph that what is the probability or the improbability of getting a self-replicating cell accidentally, naturally, randomly? 1 in a billion. Okay, let us analyze this, as the Gemara would say, nechze anan. Okay, let us see for ourselves, let's analyze this for ourselves, okay, this number. You got a gadget, because you have a gadget made out of parts. How many parts are going to be in that gadget for its random assembly to be 1 in a billion? Again, you've got a bunch of parts, they're on a table, and you got to organize them. You got to organize them in the right order randomly, okay? without knowing what the right order is. You're going to imagine disc. In the class, you guys, I talk about discs. You've got, let's do it like that, just to make it easier on your minds. You've got 13 discs, number 1 through 13, and if you put them in the right order, you get a working gadget, and they're not numbered though. Okay, there's an objective right order, but they're not numbered, you don't know. What is the chance of organizing 13 things in the right order? 1 in a billion. Okay, because the first disc is 1 over 13. If it's in the right spot, the second disc is 1 over 12. Okay, third one, 1 over 11, etc. Okay? So again, Dawkins did not talk about how many parts are in his cell, but he gave us a number of the improbability, 1 in a billion. But we, using simple mathematics, could work backwards and understand that if he's giving the number 1 in a billion, then we're dealing with a gadget of 13 parts. Again, organizing 13 parts randomly comes out 1 over 13 times 1 over 12 times 1 over 11, that comes out 1 in a billion. Okay, so Richard Dawkins is telling us that how many parts are in the original cell? 13, 1, 3, not 30, okay, not 30,000, 13. And if that is not complete and utter idiocy, I don't know what is. Why? Because what's the real number? What's the real number? Okay, like we said, the simplest cell alive today has 580,000 spaces in its instructions, okay? And even if you want to go with the lower number that synthetic biologists talk about, 30,000, well, that's 30,000. And even if you want to go with my number, where I'm way more lenient of 1,500, there's still 1,500. It's that the parts of the constructor device, the parts of the raw material device, the parts of the energy device, okay, how many parts are actually in the simplest cell possible? Clearly many thousands. And what does leading atheist Richard Dawkins, what number does he give us? 13! Absurd. Absurd. But it's even worse. Okay, it's even worse. Everyone here has surely seen, okay, either when you were young or by a younger sibling or cousin, stack the ring baby toys, right? Stack the ring baby toys. We've all seen them, okay? You've got a bunch of color rings, a baby, right? They're you know, a really wide one, a bit more narrow, and the baby's got to put them on a cylinder in the right order. Yeah, you remember these toys? Now, what is the minimum number of parts in a stack the rings baby toy? 7. Okay, you've got 5 rings, the cylinder in the middle, and a disc on the bottom that the cylinder is right stuck into, okay? So in 1 stack the ring baby points, there's a minimum of 7 parts. In 2 stack the ring baby toys, there are 7 times 2, 14 parts, okay? Comes along Richard Dawkins and tells us that the improbability of getting a cell is 1 in a billion, and we can mathematically work out that what number of parts would equal 1 in a billion, 13. It comes out that Richard Dawkins, leading atheist, okay, is telling us that there are more parts in 2 stack the ring baby toys than in a self-replicating cell. I repeat. Okay, according to leading atheist Richard Dawkins, professor in Oxford, there are more parts in 2 stack the ring baby toys than in a self-replicating cell. And as I said before, if that is not complete and utter idiocy, then I don't know what is. Now, I want to emphasize, okay, I am not quoting over here your off-the-dark friends that say I'm an atheist and they have no idea what they're talking about. I'm quoting the author of the best-selling atheist book ever, professor in Oxford, someone that millions of atheists are relying on. Okay, and what does he tell us the number of parts are in a self-replicating cell? Less than the number of parts in 2 stack the ring baby toys. Idiot, idiot, idiot. He's a completely stupid idiot. Plain and simple. Okay? Completely stupid idiot. And this image should help you to connect with that idea.
For those who didn't follow all the logic, here it's translated here.
All right.
In binary.
Now, while discussing things that Dawkins has voiced with his own mouth that are a window into his demented mind, I give you another quote from the page that I just read. Once again, guys, page 137 in the God Delusion. It is still possible to maintain that the probability of it, meaning the first cell happening, is and always was exceedingly low, although it did happen once. Listen to this, guys. However improbable the origin of life it might be, we know it happened on Earth because we are here. I repeat, However improbable the origin of life might be, we know it happened on Earth because we are here. Okay, in case you didn't understand his Oxford language over here, what he's basically saying is, since I know atheism is true, and I know there's no God, and we exist, and life exists, we obviously overcame this hurdle. Baruch Hashem. It's as simple as that. Baruch Hashem, okay?
Wait a minute. What about, okay, good.
Yes.
I think you followed this. I think your students all followed it. Can you put that now into English for the rest of us? Give us,
Okay, so again, to summarize. So let me just summarize everything up until here. Okay, even within the unknown of the first cell, okay, you have to have instructions, constructor device, raw materials device, energy device. The instructions cannot be simpler than binary digits and cannot be simpler than 1,500 spaces. That yields a basically infinite pot of possibilities.
No, that's too mathematic. Give me an example. Give me something basic for us.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize what you meant. Okay, let's actually go on. Okay, let's go on.
Because I'm talking in basic English and not binary code.
Let's go on to actually the final step. Okay, let's go on to the final step, which will not only be a much easier nusach of everything we've said until now, it'll also be guidance how to see the intelligent designer with your own eyes. We don't want to just refute the atheist. We don't want to just expose his baloney. We don't want to just show, as this lecture is called, it's not easy to be atheist. We want to see the intelligent designer with our own eyes. Let's now, in this final leg of this discussion, give you guidelines how to do that. Now, as a segue into this discussion, 2 introductions. 1, imaginary conversation. Imagine a intelligent design advocate speaking to a atheist, and he goes, "You're an atheist? Yeah, I'm an atheist. Well, haven't you ever seen a tree trunk? Yeah, I've seen the tree trunk. Therefore what?" Okay, we'll come back to that shortly. Another question, okay, another introductory question. Why do apple seeds make trees that when they hit 30 feet and make branches, out come apples, whereas an orange seed makes trees when that tree hits whatever 30 feet, out of those branches come oranges? Put these 2 things on the side and let's talk about the Empire State Building. Okay, the Empire State Building. Now, Empire State Building, 34th Street in Manhattan. Okay, but we're going to talk about before it was built. Okay, there's just a big empty lot where the Empire State Building is going to be built. Rolling down the street comes a robot the size of a 1.5 liter bottle. Okay, and it parks itself next to this big empty lot, and it begins spinning around, and with some type of suction power, it begins sucking towards itself completely random garbage. Okay, again, a single robot spinning around, and with some type of vacuum thing, sucking towards itself, totally random garbage, chewing gum, potato chip wrappers, dirty tissues, pebbles, whatever you want, okay? Now, imagine that the following is not realistic, just go with the metaphor. Imagine that this first robot breaks down all that garbage into protons, neutrons, electrons, and reconverts it into other elements on the periodic table, and it creates material from which robots can be built. And imagine that first robot builds an army of constructor robots that are able to do construction. Now, that first robot continues to gather garbage, continues to convert it into building materials, and imagine that these constructor robots use that material to begin building the Empire State Building. Now, these robots are stuck on the ground, okay, they're really small, and therefore, initially, the only way to build the Empire State Building is by shoving in material from the bottom. But as they build the Empire State Building, they're going to do it with elevators and air elevator systems and stairwell systems, so that they can eventually transport further material through these various means, okay? Now, imagine further that these robots construct the entire Empire State Building exactly like the one we're familiar with, structurally all the rooms, all the pipes, all the wires exactly like we're familiar with, okay? If that would ever happen, it would all be the result of those constructor robots, and everything those constructor robots do would have been the result of the original robot that made them, and everything the original robot would have done would all be the result of a program in that original robot. Okay, of course this is quite unrealistic, but if it would ever happen, how much awe would we have for that programmer that could accomplish that from a simple program, you get the first robot, all the constructor robots, the whole Empire State Building exactly like the one we're familiar with. Now, take a moment to think about how completely unrealistic what I just said is, and now let's talk about the fact that every single living thing is exactly this metaphor, including us, but we'll get to us shortly. Let's first talk about a tree, okay? You put a seed in the ground. Okay, if you look up actual numbers, and I have, the size of a seed relative to a tree is no different than a 1.5 liter bottle relative to the Empire State Building. It's even smaller. Okay, meaning a 1.5 liter bottle is a bigger percentage of the height of the Empire State Building than an orange seed to an orange tree. Okay. So that seed is like that little robot. We put that seed in the ground. Now, I don't think anyone in this room actually thinks there's a little tree inside the seed that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? But I don't think anyone here really thinks that, but we kind of relate to it that way. But of course, there's no little tree inside the seed. What is inside that seed? DNA. Instructions, a program, and following those genetic instructions, molecules are pulled out of dirt, water, air, okay, and sunlight, which both has elements in it, and sunlight, of course, also provides energy and photosynthesis, okay? But from dirt, water, air, and sunlight, molecules are pulled out, and out comes a tree trunk, okay? Out comes the tree trunk. Now, a few minutes ago, I made my imaginary conversation between the atheist and the intelligent design guy. How are you an atheist? Don't you see tree trunks? Regarding which I said that the atheist will respond, yeah, I see tree trunks, so what? Okay, let's not be conceptually brain dead like that atheist, and let's actually look at what's going on over here. Okay, wood comes out of dirt, water, air, and sunlight. Is wood coming out of dirt, water, air, and sunlight very different than the Empire State Building being built from random garbage in the street? Now, obviously, it's not a perfect comparison. Obviously, whatever elements are found in wood are found in dirt, water, air, and sunlight, otherwise chemically it wouldn't happen. But as far as appearances go, conceptually, is it really that different? Okay? Wood comes out of dirt, water, air, and sunlight. Think about how different the wood is from that dirt, water, air, and sunlight. Okay? But again, we are conceptually brain dead. Forgive my harif way of speaking, but this is exactly how it is. Okay? And we're blind. We don't see, we don't see what's going on in front of our face. All right, the tree trunk grows, and eventually, at about 30 feet, branches begin coming out. What the heck? Okay, what molecules are being taken out of dirt, water, air, and sunlight in a way that branches branch out of the tree trunk? What's making that happen? I don't know, but it happens. Okay, and eventually out of those branches come an orange. Okay, come an orange. Okay, is the orange coming from wood, coming from dirt, water, air, and sunlight really that different than a building of stone and metal and wire and pipe coming from random garbage in the street? Okay? And not only does that orange emerge from the wood, which emerges from the dirt, water, air, and sunlight, okay, you take that orange off, and what do you know? It's got a package. Okay, it's got a package so that if it falls off a tree, it doesn't go splat. But very conveniently, when you're ready to eat it, that package conveniently comes off. And what do you discover? After you take off that package, someone has very thoughtfully pre-sliced this for you, so you can just take each one slice at a time. Now, I personally, as my students know, love oranges. Right, talk a lot, my throat gets dry. I like oranges because it's got, basically every orange has got a cup of orange juice. But, okay, it's not that we open up an orange and a cup of orange juice pours onto our white shirt and we've got to take it to the cleaners. Someone very thoughtfully came up with this brilliant idea, which you virtually don't even see in the man-way world, of little packets, little juice packets where you combine solid with liquid so you get all the benefits of a cup of orange juice without having to take your shirts to the cleaner. And that is in those pre-sliced slices inside that package, coming out of wood, coming out of dirt, water, air, and sunlight. Okay? How much awe would we have of the programmer in the mushal? How much awe should we have of the programmer in the nimshal? Okay? In reality. Okay? Every living thing. This is exactly like the metaphor. Now, why in fact does an apple seed make a tree that makes apples? And an orange seed makes a tree that makes oranges? Same dirt, same water, same air, same sunlight. Okay, it's not like, apple trees grow, in this environment and orange seeds there. Same exact dirt, water, air, and sunlight. But what? This one has a program that makes molecules taken out in such a way that out come eventually oranges. This one has a program that pulls molecules out of that same dirt, water, air, and sunlight so that eventually what comes out is apples or oranges. I don't remember which one I said first, okay? Exactly like the metaphor, okay? Now, the purpose of this exercise over here was not for you to say, ooh, orange is so amazing, there must be a God. Okay, the purpose of this exercise is to focus your mind on how awesome DNA is. DNA is not any less awesome than the program in the mushal. Maybe that DNA evolved, okay, maybe DNA got it by accident, we have already discussed. It is impossible to get instructions accidentally. You cannot get useful instructions accidentally because whatever we said before is always going to be true. The pot of possibilities by instructions is always going to be so huge that whatever's useful is such a less than drop in an ocean of what's possible. You can't get instructions naturally. Okay? And therefore, we are clearly dealing with a program that must have come from an intelligent designer. And I repeat, how much oil would you have for the programmer in the mashal? How much oil would you have in the nimshal? I don't need to speak about trees, okay? Every one of us, every single one of us is an example of what we're talking about here. Okay, every one of us started off as a fertilized egg, and okay, our mothers ate whatever, all the weird combinations that pregnant women eat, and their bodies broke down that food into molecules, and those molecules were then reconstructed as 9-month-old baby you. And I don't need to talk about you as a baby. Okay, right now, you are what you eat, as the saying goes. Okay, right now, we eat food. Where does everything in our body come from? We eat food, it's broken down to molecules, and that is reconstructed as you, thanks to this thing called the program. Okay, the program. Again, how much oil would we have of the programmer in the mashal? How much oil should we have in the nimshal? Okay, if we stop being conceptually brain dead, again, forgive my harif way of speaking, but that is how it is. If we stop being conceptually brain dead and we open our eyes when we look at biological design, and we open our eyes, we use our minds, okay? We don't just look with our eyes, we also look with our minds. The intelligent designer will become very, very real. Just like when you look at a watch, you are one step removed from seeing the watchmaker. If you really could unbrain dead yourself, okay, to realize how phenomenal living things are, okay, the intelligent designer will likewise be. Yeah, you'll be one step removed from seeing him, and I want to give a special shout out for colors. Colors, okay? Think about how colorful the world is thanks to colors. Okay, so much more beautiful world is it thanks to colors, whether the colors of flowers, whether the colors of the leaves in autumn, whether the colors of fruits and vegetables. Okay, colors are awesome. Okay, and where's it all coming from? Dirt, water, air, and sunlight. Ain't no colors in the dirt, ain't no colors in the water, ain't no colors in the air and the sunlight. Okay, and yet what? Thanks to that program, molecules are taken out in such a way that we get all these colors and all these foods and so on. How much oil would we have in the mashal? How much oil should we have in the nimshal? Again, if you really take this into account as you look at the wonders of the biological world, you will hopefully save yourself from this mathematically incompetent insanity called atheism. I hope you've enjoyed. Good night.